Just
We're live. We're live. Hi, everyone. So good to be here. It's always great to be here on Tuesday nights. I'm always looking forward for it. And I have here my friends tonight. Nick, how are you? And Kareem.
It's always good to be here on a Tuesday night. Welcome to the Josana Show. Me and Kareem. We are here to we are guests with her. This is her show. We're gonna have a good time though. Good to be here with you. We got Kareem as well.
Yeah, good to be here with you. I was fascinated by Josana's beautiful necklace today. So can you tell us the story behind that necklace?
Yes, I bought this necklace from a member of a tribe in Colombia, and I bought it because it reminds me the colors of my mom's tribe in Brazil. It's very close, and it's kin to me.
Cool, cool.
Thank you. Kareem, can we start with your beautiful monologue?
Yeah, there's something I wanted to discuss today, and I guess you guys had the same idea. You also had that topic in your mind that we need to discuss it sometime. So let me start saying what I wanted to say. So you guys know I'm a psychologist. I'm a social psychologist, and I try to tie sociology with psychology. And one of my favorite theories in psychology is called minimal group paradigm. For your audience, you can look it up. It's called minimal group paradigm. What it shows is an amazingly simple human experiment showing an exceptionally resistant and powerful human tendency. Namely, when you are put in a group based on any category you can imagine, you will start to show in-group favoritism and out-group derogation. The more you emphasize the made-up group distinction, the more in-group favoritism and out-group derogation will be experienced among the group members. Now, take note of me saying made-up distinction. I can literally divide my students in my classes based on any arbitrary distinction imaginable, such as people who like bright colors versus people who like darker colors. And from the moment they are put into these two groups, they will distinguish themselves from each other by seeing the other group as more negative than their own. This phenomenon is so powerful that you see it all over the world. Every single time you put people into groups. Why am I mentioning this today? Because it is one of the most important aspects to overcome in our struggle against global inequality rooted in capitalist hierarchies. Minimal group paradigm is one of the central reasons why the division of us as human beings into racial groups, for example, is so successful in dividing us for hundreds of years. The powerful tendency to show in-group favoritism based on a categorical distinction that is totally made up by us has us now divided for hundreds of years. You see the same with religious identities and many other identities. Now, another division has recently been showing up more and more. And before we know it, it will be yet another successful categorical distinction put forward by the ruling class to divide us up. Namely, the distinction between the bookworms or the theoretical left versus the so-called boots on the ground, real life experience working class left. Increasingly, we see rejectionist statements such as, I don't need theory, I live class struggle, or all these people only know theory but don't understand real life. Similarly, the other side will use statements as dumb left. Indeed, what we see here is the dawn of a minimal group paradigm style manufactured division that will render the left toothless and completely ineffectual. When do we leftists finally start to understand that such manufactured distinctions serve a function? They divide you, make you weak, and allow the ruling class to divide you like puppets. By repeatedly emphasizing that there is a theoretical left and a boots on the ground left, you are unwittingly replaying the minimal group paradigm experiment. The continuous emphasis on this binary group distinction creates disdain and negative sentiments towards the out-group and positive sentiments towards the in-group. That is, if you are in the boots on the ground left, you will increasingly identify with this identity that has been made up by others, and you will at the same time de-identify or even reject the made-up identity against which it has been pitted against, namely the intellectual left. Understand how you are being played all the time so that you will not bind with other human beings. The distinction is false, nonsense, and ridiculous. It is almost as ridiculous as dividing people up into groups of tall people and short people and then saying that the tall people are real leftists and the smaller people are not. That doesn't make sense now, does it? Well, that same stupidity happened when our unscientific ancestors divided us up and said that if you don't have melanin in your skin, you are smart and superior, while if you do have melanin in your skin, you are unintelligent and inferior. Ridiculous, but unfortunately very powerful by using the human tendency as showed by minimal group paradigm. So again, the distinction between the intellectual and non-intellectual left is false and nonsense. I, myself, am a boots on the ground leftist. I come from an intellectual family of parents who both were raised in working class families, with my Dutch mother being raised in a family of Dutch socialists, with a grandfather that fought with other socialists against Nazi Germany, and a father coming from a man who was born in colonial Algeria and fought for the French also against Nazi Germany. I am at the same time an academic at one of Asia's most prestigious universities, comparable to what Ivy League is to Americans. Does that make me an elitist? No. My academic work is full of resistance, and I spend my free time contributing to activism. Similarly, I know working class individuals who never studied but read books, who are intellectually engaged and incredibly smart. I think about my brother Nick Cruz, who has no PhD, but who is exceptionally smart, likes to read books, and loves to discuss leftism from underground, on the boots on the ground activism to Marxist theory and decolonial theory. We are one and the same. We have everything within us as human beings and individuals. That is the beauty of our complexity. We are intellectuals, we are boots on the ground, we are kind, and we are strong. Do not let anyone pull these characteristics out of you and assign them to you, just one or two of these characteristics, and say that the rest of them belong to other groups. They did that with race and skin color already. Do not let them do that again. Anti-intellectualism on the left is an exceptionally dangerous trend, and I will tell you why. Without theory and academia, the working class will be convinced by unscientific heuristics. That is, they will be convinced by the simplest, most popular ideas and solutions, regardless of their truth. How would you explain Black people disproportionately being stuck in poverty without academic theory? Well, for example, one could say that they are more stupid, lazy, or criminal. This explanation is particularly attractive, getting back to minimal group paradigm, when there is a motivation to derogate the outgroup based on made-up identities. In other words, my friends, you need theory and thinkers to unpack and explain the structural, institutional, and systemic boundaries that have been set up for people of color that reproduce and maintain their disadvantage. Furthermore, without theory, how would you explain climate change? You would say it's a hoax. You'd even start believing in QAnon or white replacement theory and other weird ideas. With theory, we can show the world what is going on. Being anti-intellectualism is playing in the hands of the right, including the liberal right. That is, where they want you because it maintains the status quo. Historically, the right has been anti-intellectualism because intellectuals on the left are extremely threatening to power and capital. It is the theoretical left that unpacks systems of unfairness and inequality, such as Karl Marx, Kwame Nkrumah, and Malcolm X. It is also why the right is so afraid of critical race theory. Again, emphasizing the stupidity of leftists joining in on the anti-CRT hype and anti-intellectualism. It is the theoretical left that educates young minds in our universities in a way that makes them question authority and systems of power as well as social inequality. Unsurprisingly, all over the West, the right wing has begun a crusade against left-wing indoctrination on our universities, something we see not only in the US, but in European countries such as the Netherlands and the UK as well. Again, intellectualism is threatening to power, and leftists who join in on this are useful idiots to power. As a professor myself, I ask of you to critically think for yourself. Think and question. Do not blindly jump on populist phrases and one-liners such as the woke mob, social justice warriors, or now, we don't need books and theory on the left. You are playing in the hands of power by adopting these populist, tough-sounding catchphrases. Always ask yourself the question, why so many people put so much effort and energy in demeaning, demonizing, and insulting something from the left. Because the fact that they do means it is threatening and therefore of significance. The crusade against thought schools such as CRT, woke, Black Lives Matter, Marxism, and now the theoretical left is evidence of their potential for change and their inherent power. People are willing to put so much blood, sweat, and tears into ridiculing them because they are afraid. It threatens their comfortable and privileged position. Think about it. If you want to cook a very tasty pie, you can stand in the kitchen and just do something at random. Or you can learn from a book how to cook a tasty pie and then apply what you learned in real life. This is how we must see leftist activism, to know what to fight for and how we must understand what we are fighting and why. In other words, you need thinkers and you need doers. And most often, thinkers are doers and doers are thinkers. There is no real division. We are just one and the same. That's what I wanted to say.
Well said, Kareem. There's so much to break down there. This is the position of this channel. I want to break a lot of the myths and a lot of the cultural rot I see that people fall for that only serves the ruling class. Like we talk about class solidarity, stand solidarity with your brothers and sisters. Meaning you actually stand for their struggles, their liberation as well. There's a lot of people who they take this thing that you're talking about here, which is an important point, where they make activism, they make leftism like a competition almost. Like, I do the most, so I am higher on the hierarchy, right? And even if you're an intellectual that teaches and influences minds, they'll just look at you like, oh, you're just a bookworm. You're not actually doing anything. And when I see people do this kind of stuff, and I see the vice versa, I see this happen to me all the time. As someone who just started as a poor working class person trying to learn how to be activist over the last few years, when we had the General Strike Summit, you had a lot of the boutique professional left. Instead of joining us in solidarity and helping us grow this movement that is desperately needed, as shown by the union workers that endorse our General Strike Summit, right? But instead of joining with us, you had a lot of them that said, who are these people? How dare they think they can hold a General Strike Summit? Are they union leaders? What gives them the right? That was their way to divide the left. The same thing shown in the Medicare for All March. There were some people that were saying, I don't want to support the Medicare for All marches because they are ran by unruly mobs and we want to see professionals run this. There's just a bunch of podcasters and grifters. Like, they were just, the level of classism that was shown to fight against the Medicare for All march against the critics was insane. They were saying, well, you guys don't have, the thing is, it wasn't even true because we did have doctors, nurses, all that stuff, but they was using that, the classism, to attack. Like, how dare you organize? So both sides are complicit with this. And the CIA has done an amazing job. Our establishment has done a major job dividing people and making people think that activism is a competition. I want to get Josana's thoughts as well. I'm gonna get a super chat, but before I continue, I want to leave you guys this thought. Everyone in this movement has a role, and it's not like this one static thing that moves. Like, oh, you gotta do this, you gotta do mutual aid, you gotta do this, you got no. It's a complex, multiple flowing organism that is a movement, right? You got some people that are educating, you got some people who are running food banks, you have some people who are canvassing, knocking doors, you got some people that maybe cook the food for the food bank. So my point is, everyone has that role, and the people who want to say, "Oh, you're not worthy of doing activism or a YouTube boutique to do activism," that only serves the establishment. So I got much more I want to add to that, but I do want to get Josana in here. Josana, any thoughts? Anything you want to add to this? We do have this great super chat here from Anthony Ryder, and you can chime in on this, Josana. It said these discussions are essential. Peace and prosperity from Canada to all from 2022. And yeah, if you guys watch my content, my whole thing is love your neighbor, don't blame your neighbor. Like, give your neighbor and give activists all the benefit of doubt, but don't give the ruling class any. I give the ruling class no benefit of doubt. But our brothers and sisters, we got to be in community with each other. But Josana, what's your thoughts? You have anything you want to add? This is a good topic, Kareem.
Yeah. I love that Kareem brought this topic up, and I've seen I've seen so much of that. And while you were doing your monologue, it reminded me from the time that I was in academia and we were organizing with the real boots on the ground people. And there was this event of the landless movement. We went all to Rio de Janeiro and in the Federal University there. And during the day, it was like a summit. So during the day, we had like classes and discussions and spaces for debate. But every night we would sit together, they would play music and we would celebrate together. Because sitting together to eat and celebrating together breaks all the differences. We were not all in the same political views. I mean, of course, no right winger person will be there, but like if they wanted, the door was open and we would learn from them the knowledge of the land, the knowledge of the earth that you are part of it. Not being in community is the easiest way to be divided. I was talking about that today a little bit, and I always make this analogy like point your finger in any position. I'm going to do this one. And then there are three other fingers right back at you. So like when we start this in fight, I always like to say that we're volunteering for the CIA. And I remember at times like needing the feeling to feel normal, to feel like a normal person, because it was so much of like we had in fight too, but it was so much of like an adrenaline to always have to be like, and always trying to get to be heard. I need to be heard. And then you learn from people that work the land. Sit and listen. Have two eyes, two ears, two nostrils. You can look, you can see, you can hear, you can breathe, and then you can talk. And I think when we are open to learn, the more we are open to learn, the more we listen, and the more we learn when we listen and observe. And I feel like sometimes there is a lot of like, at least here, my observation is like there is this need for an identity in America, like need for like, I am this team or this state, I'm from this, whatever. And I've seen many theoretical leftists. I didn't even know that this was a thing. Like, oh, I'm Maoist. Oh, I'm Marxist, Leninist. And I'm like, oh, fuck Marx. He observed all the African tribes and he saw them in community and then he decoded in a book. It's important that you read, but when you use that man as an identity to put yourself in a superior position, then you're just wrong. It doesn't matter how many books you read. Karim.
Yeah, no, totally agree with what you said. And I think that is one of the biggest problems that we face today is that how 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 we are actually how the complexity of us as human beings is being taken away from us by all these superficial identities. I find that extremely frustrating. Like, for example, I already had it as a small child, like I come from an Algerian dad and a Dutch mom growing up in the north of the Netherlands, super, you can almost say ethnically Dutch. And just based on my name, people had all these assumptions. And I'm like, when you really think about that, it's so unfair, like how putting this stamp on people, this identity, boots on the ground, left, black, white, yellow, tall, small, this, that. The moment you do that, the moment you create a categorical distinction, you assign to them these qualities that come from our popular culture. You know what I mean? So you could just call them stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is that they immediately eradicate the complexity of the individual, which is extremely frustrating. And it becomes even more frustrating when it's based on physical cues, because physical cues, people cannot escape it. You cannot escape being black. You know what I mean? So the problem is that people already assign to you qualities and ideas and motivations just based on what they see. And I think one of the crucial things for us to understand is that we have most things that we assign to other people inside ourselves. That also means that we are both boots on the ground activists, but we are also theoretical thinkers. All of us. You're not going to convince me that you are a working class leftist and you don't like books and you have nothing with then you would not be on this channel listening to us. Very simple. And it makes sense because we are all want to understand things. We all want to think and try to understand how the world works. So you're a theorist. Okay, you're a theorist, you're a thinker, all of you. Not just me who is an academic, all of you. And at the same time, we all want to change something. We all want to reach out to communities. We all want to talk to each other. We all want to bind and build. So we are boots on the grounds too. Like, this is so ridiculous. Letting our cultures, and especially the ruling class, divide us up and then believing in that stuff. It's so powerful. I always say racial identities are made up by colonial oppressors and people believe in it now. I mean, Nick calls himself black. Josanna probably calls herself black. That is an identity that was created for you. And over the hundreds of years, complete communities have built themselves around these identities. Of course, also with outside pressures, such as colonialism, slavery, and so forth. But the issue here is that, for example, I like the whole discussion about like binary people, what is it? The whole gender discussion, people, non-binary people, and that kind of makes sense. Because these are social identities created for you. And some people want to extract themselves from these social identities. I am me. I am not based on my sexual preferences. I'm not based on my skin color. I'm not based on this ridiculous idea of race. So some people don't want to identify like that anymore. And it makes sense to me. You know what I mean? Because all these identifications separate us. It's a very powerful tendency. And at the same time, it extracts from us the complexity of who we are, because we share a lot of things with people from other categorical identities. We're just made to believe that we don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, and I think it's also important to realize that we are social beings and we point at things and we call things name, we call the world names, right? Identification is also coming from your ego, and the ego is the personality mask that we live through capitalism and white supremacy. So identification with label, it's something that is natural in this system. So you have dated from way before, and you have tribal men in the continent of Africa that were non-binary, and that was, they were considered an entity. So it's the switch of values, the change of values in accordance with the system that has to be imposed. And in this case, I'm going to say the word We live in the system of white supremacy. So we need to feel less and less every day. So we buy and consume stuff to feel better. So if my identity is this one that's not in accordance with the social rule of the system, I will be bullied. I will be considered apart. I will be pushed to the side. And yes, I mean, as my friend Sato always says, like, if I was in a black world, I would not call myself black. I am black because the eyes of the white man made me black in ways that he looked down on me. I am proudly black. But I know this identity because before I have this strength and self-pride, I was first put to the side of the system. I still am, but now I'm a big girl, so it's different. Go ahead, Nick.
So there's so many important things what Kareem has said, and that's why the message of the channel and what I try and bring to people is build coalitions and have massive solidarity with each other in our communities, right? So this entire division that has been forced upon people is in order to uphold capitalism and the two-party system. So what Kareem said, where you have people that are immediately thrown in box based on their ethnicity, their race, and I've been directly impacted by this because once again, I told you guys I had a billion reasons why I want to support Joe Biden, right? But once again, I couldn't tell you guys the visceral reaction I received because once again, a lot of people just threw me into a box. They saw a black guy who refused to vote for Democrats, a black guy who refused to vote for Joe Biden. You see how they use this as a system of control? So all of a sudden, I'm bad, I'm horrible, I'm deplorable, I'm not worth a damn. The same way you had Hillary Clinton write off an entire large swath of the country. Oh yeah, the poor working white working class, they have no reason to be upset at the system. They're just deplorables. Instead of looking at what the establishment has done to make them upset as well. And then you have a lot of poor black people who they don't vote, they don't care, they anti-establishment. And I have lived my entire life watching these people be talked down to by the liberal class. So they use these same racial barriers as a way not only to control people, but also as a way to divide people in these two parties and these classes, right? So they make it this way. And I've seen people who are like black nationalists and ADOS. Like these people fall for this all the time. I've seen a lot of these people who are ADOS and a lot of people who agree with me because I support reparations, I support black liberation. But they will say stuff like this. They'll say, oh, we can't support, we got to have strong immigration stances because it's the immigrants that are taking our jobs. It's the immigrants that are stealing our labor and black wealth. Whoa, what happened? What happened? So once again, I'll continue to make the argument. These immigrants that are victims of U.S. imperialism has nothing to do with the fact that these billionaires who are making record profits are not paying their workers. What do these immigrants have to do with civil asset forfeiture, the state that actually steals our wealth? But you see, even black people, once again, that's the great point that Kareem is making. Even black people can fall for that. Even black people can be pitted against another group. And a lot of people don't like me because I called them out. I'm like, I don't like the nationalist elements. A lot of people in ADOS where they are strictly anti-immigrant because their logic is if we spend political capital advocating for them, we won't get ours. I don't believe we should. That is toxic thinking on the left that was been implemented by the establishment. But Kareem, I think you want to ask something, right? I want to pass it to you if you did.
Yeah. So it's good that you mentioned ADOS and people from that corner of the activist side, you could say. It genuinely saddens me, Nick, because I genuinely see a lot of intelligent, good stuff coming from the ADOS community. And in fact, I'm following some of their channels, and I'm just so deeply saddened by the fact that, why are they not on our side? You know what I mean? Like some of them are so incredibly smart. Like I follow a guy named Tone Talks who does stuff, who does economic analysis of how black people are situated in the United States. He does good stuff. Tone Talks. He does really good analysis of black wealth in the society and stuff. But he's also a supporter of ADOS. And there's another quite interesting channel called African Diaspora Channel who focus on white supremacy a lot. but also they also have these often a kind of black identity kind of segments, like for example, all these other groups. Of course, they will first take care of all these other groups. No, don't say that. All these other groups are struggling with you against the same ruling class. Don't blame the other groups for getting something or not getting something, and then you getting something and not. But blame the person who decides who gets something and who not. It's so important to see that. You know what I mean?
They love, the establishment love dividing people with oppression Olympics. Like I tell people, I'm not even interested in debating who had it worse, indigenous people or black people. Who have it worse, Palestinian or black people, black Brazilians or black Americans. Like that is probably the least interesting discussion to have to me. All I know is we all victims of this system. I don't care. Like, well, I do care about the degrees, but I don't care about comparing it with each other. But I do want to say, because what I do want to add nuance. I always want to add nuance. I don't. When I talk about the ADOS people, I don't think they're bad people. Like you guys hear when I talk about people sometimes, I straight up will call like neoliberals, like these people are fucking evil. These people are propagandists. When I talk about ADOS people, I do not think these people are bad people. And the reason why I even bring them up is I'm telling you that propaganda affects everyone. Everyone needs to decolonize their mind. Because I am very open, guys. Like I have not been the perfect ally my entire life. It's like there was a point where I needed to decolonize my mind. There's a point where I got to decolonize, and I probably still got a lot of work to do. So when I see ADOS people, a lot of what they say, I strongly agree with. Especially on the lot of positions on Black reparations. If you listen to them on economics, it's really good. But then they're just they stray off the path because of propaganda and oppression Olympics, propaganda influence in their mind, where they were like, we gotta compete against the Latinos in order for us to have political capital. Like, and my thing is, no, the billionaire class, the capitalist class, they owe us everything. They owe us everything. And once again, I'm speaking on ADOS because this is my community. But trust me, guys, it's a giant problem. Not with just our community, but there's giant anti-blackness in the Latino community. There is a lot of anti-blackness in the Asian community. Once again, a lot of people don't want to talk about this stuff. A lot of people do not want to talk about this stuff, but there's a giant anti-black sentiment in Asian culture. Once again, they get caught up in the oppression Olympics as well. Like Korean shop owners, they're like, oh my God, these fucking thugs stealing from our shops. Fucking criminal. Like, once again, I can get into a whole monologue about it, but I think, Kareem, you want to say something, right?
Yeah, well, it's you see it here in Asia, you see it in Europe, you see it everywhere, and it's very simple. It's just like you said it very well just now, Nick. You said we have to decolonize our minds. It's just internalized white supremacist racism. It's very simple. The fact that the let's say the white majority countries are the worst in COVID right now, okay, dealing with COVID, so many infections. Yet in each country around the world, immigrants who get blamed for COVID are never white immigrants. Now you can ask yourself the question, why? Why is it Africans most of the times? Or other people from the global south, even though their countries often have the least or a very little amount compared to Western countries, amount of COVID infections. Why? Internalized white supremacist racism. It's the almost inability that it even comes up in your mind to blame people classified as white. Not because you're a nefarious person or you're an evil person. You have been so conditioned by media, school, education, culture to always think in that direction, because racism is an ideology. It's not a biological fact. It's an ideology, and racism was invented to only aim at one direction. That is, the darker you go, the worse it gets. You know what I mean? And you see it still today in the way people are who get blamed for things. It's always immigrants that are from some non-Western country, and it doesn't happen to people from the West. Similarly in Malaysia, expats somehow they escape all the blame, even though they've been severely colonized. Horrible things have happened to the Malaysians, So like I said, like you said, Nick, the decolonization of our minds and really understand these psychological processes in the way we think is so crucial, so incredibly crucial.
Yeah, I actually have a question I have saved for you, Kareem. Josana, you can go because I have this question. We can do that next, but Josana, you want to go? You can go ahead.
I was just like listening to what you were saying, Kareem, and just the term West in itself carries so much untruth, because you have in the West, like here in the continent of America, you have like countries that are like as not part of the West, the so colonizer imperialist West, like the US, Canada, France. Like, for starters, you have like the US taking away all natural resources, taking control. It has the control of Central and South America, North America. And when we come here, we are considered illegal immigrants. The natural resources are gone. We have the most corrupt governments, so the US can keep on the control over these countries and these economies. And when we have the need to go somewhere, and even being threatened, like happens a lot in Mexico or Guatemala, and you have to run away, you come for refuge. You are a refugee, and you are called an illegal immigrant. The first thing that happens in the border, when you cross the border asking for refuge because you are a refugee, you are arrested. Every single person that crosses the border without taking a plane and without an I-94 has to be arrested. So you asking for refuge from the country that provoked the consequence of you coming here for refuge, and you are arrested. And also to Nick's point, in the cages, the concentration camps with the children in the southern border, the Black children, they stay in isolation. The dynamics of race and ethnicity, they play itself in the cages, and the children are extremely isolated. The indigenous children who don't speak Spanish nor English, even more. And they're going to grow up, because they will only leave there when they can get a court date, and it's when they are 18 years old. They're going to grow up and learn English from a cop.
While being abused, yeah, because abuse is
there is no
endemic in these
supervision. There
facilities.
is abuses and no supervision. The cops don't have to answer to nobody.
I wanna ask you, before we get to the main topic I usually got see in the title, I want to get to this question, Kareem. Someone asked from Eric, Kareem, any advice for public school teachers and talking about classism as a whole with students? As you guys know, Kareem is a professor at the University of Hong Kong. But go ahead, take the question.
Yeah, that's a difficult question, because I don't know how open the school that you are at is to that kind of discussion, and also how it probably it also difference. It's different per state, I guess, in the United States. You know how states react to that kind of thing. But if you would ask me, I am very straightforward in my teaching. Like, seriously, I'm not censoring myself. I teach everything about class the way I talk to you guys. I'm just talking about how identities separate people, how they were created back in colonial times to separate the working class into racial and ethnic groups, so they would start to compete. And therefore, today we still have that issue of racism, for example. And I would just simply explain that through minimal group paradigm, what I just did with you guys, how easy it is to divide people. And once you divide people, they don't join hands. They just won't. They will spend day to day, and now with the internet even more, just bashing each other. The whole day bashing each other. And in the meantime, the rich get richer. It's very simple, you know, and the colonial powers knew this already early on, you know what I mean? And not even the colonial powers, even before that, you know, the Romans knew that as well, divide and conquer. So my advice, if you just ask me, I think the best thing we can always do in the world is just be ourselves and be frank and be honest. And most of the time, the students really appreciate that. Like you get a lot of appreciation from the students. And yeah, what else can you do? You know, I think the biggest danger is that once we start to think, oh, I cannot talk about this, I cannot talk about this. As long as you don't talk about anything immoral, as long as you don't do it out of any nefarious motivation, I think you should be able to discuss pretty much anything.
Yeah. So I am interested in how much freedom you guys have in China. Like, are you guys like free to talk about like Marxist anti-capitalist ideas? Because you've been following, you see the crackdown on not only just critical race theory but Marxism in America. Like, capitalists are so afraid of any alternative being taught. They refusing to, and they're cracking down on people even teaching the basic concepts of Marxism in schools. And Professor Richard Wolff, he speaks in great detail. Despite the right wing myth that somehow university is hijacked by out of control leftism, no, this is liberalism that's hijacked university, not leftism. Because if you actually look at like the economics, they all believe in trickle down economics. They're all imperialists. And Richard Wolff said himself, like he's a Marxist professor, but as he made his development, he had many people in his career, and you can hear him talk about this all the time, that pretty much told him, like, yo, you cannot go down the route of Marxism or your career will be over. They will end your career. Richard Wolff also spoke about many professors, and that's actually Dr. Cornel West spoke about this as well. He spoke about professors that like straight up made the decision, like, yeah, actually I studied Marxism, like Marxism, but I got to preach free market capitalism if I had to take care of my career. There have been people that have been canceled otherwise, but Kareem, I know you want to chime in. Go ahead.
No, good question. And I'll say this is a different world, Nick. And let me give you an example. In China, it is an official subject, Marxist theory. It's an official subject, even in high school. It's an official subject.
I haven't heard anything about Marxism until like post-college. Like, I maybe heard the term in passing, maybe in like college textbooks, but in high school, hell no. Like in high school, they should have said communism is when they make everyone is paid the same, it's evil, they steal your wealth, that's it, end story. That was it.
But that's the difference. That's the difference of the education of the capitalist imperial court. Because I was reading The Capital, I was like 14 years old. Like we were discussing Marxism in Brazil as well. I think it's like from here, the training for you to be a capitalist and a liberal.
Yeah, well, the good thing is, and that's why I think the Chinese will outcompete, and let's still call it the West or the Western world, is that what the Chinese do is something that the West, Europe, and North America in particular don't do, and that is that now they don't only teach their own theory and their own ways of thinking, they are also teaching everything else: neoliberalism, liberalism. Western individualism, psychology, and so forth. So what they do is they are hungry also for the knowledge from other parts of the world. You also see that with the Japanese, for example. The West, because we've been so hegemonic for 500 years, we just lost the ability to be interested in other people. Like when you go to China, people play the violin, people play Western instruments, people like to listen to classical music, jazz, whatever. But in the West, how many people are interested in classical Chinese music? How many people are interested in Chinese theory? How many people are interested in Chinese art? How many people are interested in these things? Like for us, it's so normal that the rest of the world is interested in our ways of thinking and ways of being. But we have completely lost that in the West, that a total lack of interest for the rest of the world. Again, that has to do with that division that was created there, and that slowly that created in people just this kind of disinterest in other human beings outside of the European or in general the Western world. But that was something that's so fascinating to me, that here they learn not only from their own stuff, but they learn from others, and they are hungry for it. But in the West, you only learn about other Westerners. If you're in science, the citations you get, the teachers you get, the books you read, it's all West, 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 West. And a total lack of hunger for knowledge from the non-Western world. I'm not saying everyone, I'm not saying absolute, but in general, just like Richard Wolff says in the field of economy. And I think that's a big, big mistake. And I think that will contribute to the downfall of the West, because the West only knows its old ways. You see it in the competition with China. Only the old way of power, dominance, aggression, threatening. Even now you see that China is doing a better job in Africa, for example. I'm not saying China is perfect, but doing a much better job than the West in Africa. even then, the West doesn't think like, oh, you know what? Maybe we should also try and treat these people as human beings and change our policy towards a more egalitarian way. No, we're cracking down even harder. We're sending troops. We're trying to make a Cold War with China. So you see that they don't learn. And China is already embracing a new way. That is a combination between state-controlled capitalism plus the fact that you pull people out of poverty. Otherwise, you get the drama like in neoliberal United States. You also don't compete with all the people that you need stuff from, like in Africa or Latin America. You work together, so they are not going to resist in the future, and you have to send an army. You, at the same time, you invest in the United States to such an extent that it is so much connected to your economy, the United States, that if the United States would do anything to China, it would be self-destruction. So China has already a new way. And the United States and the West in general sticks to the old way. They haven't learned. They haven't evolved. It's the old way of colonial domination, which is just not going to work anymore. We live in a different time. It's over. It's over.
And they are panicking because of that. I have another comment I think can spark some good discussion before we move on to another topic. This from Bob, and I can take a shot at this, and you guys can as well. It said, poor whites have white privilege, but nothing else. How can we get poor working people to join together by giving one race reparations? So, for one, the premise of the statement is incorrect. So you know that white slave owners got reparations when they lost their slaves. You had people who was victims of Japanese internment camps who got reparations. So when you say, how can we get poor working people to join together by giving one race reparations, I reject the premise because other people already got reparations. So my question is, why are you denying the debt that is already owed to a group of people? So my position is, I think not only do our people deserve reparations, because there's a debt owed to our people. I think Palestinian people deserve reparations for the genocide we fought in Israel. I support the land back movement. I believe indigenous people deserve reparations. You guys see what I did? You see what I did? That's real class solidarity. When I say I think Palestinians should get reparations, I don't benefit. Well, hold on. Let me correct myself. I was about to say I don't benefit from that, but I actually disagree with that. I caught myself. So what I'm saying, if you're poor and white, why wouldn't you support reparations? Once again, reparations is a system of healing. It's a system that can start rebuilding the generational wealth that was denied our people. That will only help you guys too. So I don't even understand the opposition. So I acknowledge that. So if you give reparations to indigenous people, to Palestinians, that will only help our community, because the healing prospect of that alone is giant. So my question is, why would poor working class people be against the concept of reparations? You guys will say you guys support class consciousness and class solidarity, but you fighting against the debt that is owed our people is not class solidarity. It's not. So what's the argument for that position of, oh, I'm a white leftist, I'm a white anti-capitalist, but I don't support reparations for black people? Let's explore the logic in that. People, why would you have that opinion? Do you think that we as a state do not have the money to pay the debt that is owed our people? Even though we know that the corporations and Wall Street have stole billions and billions from us, they made trillions of dollars in this pandemic. So what happened to the class consciousness? You guys know they got the wealth. You guys know they have the money to pay. Joe Biden just increased the military budget again. So is the argument from white leftists that we don't have the capital? That's absurd. Now, so once again, it's not black leftists who are breaking class solidarity by demanding reparations. It's the white leftists who fight against reparations for Palestinians, for black people, for indigenous people. It's you guys that are breaking class solidarity, not us. Because I support what you got. When you look at what I support, everything I support, when I support ending the police state, when I support giving people health care, when I support giving people not just a living wage, a thriving wage, you guys acknowledge that all these things help the poor working white class. And I use that as a selling point to people. I'm like, bro, my politics help you out. So my question is, why am I interested in helping you out with my politics, but we ask for the debt that is owed our community, but you guys want to fight us on that? You guys see the difference in solidarity there? Don't. I'm not talking about Bob. I think Bob is just talking about in general. But I flipped many white leftists on this issue of reparations. And once again, I don't care about helping Democrats get elected. I don't care about making people comfortable. My only job is to probe the Overton window to the left. And if you're anti-capitalist and you're anti-Marxist, any argument against reparations do not hold water. You guys don't have to address this, but if you guys want to, you can.
Yeah. I think what you say there is so good, Nick. That's such a good point. That you actually counter that question by asking, why would you not support it? That's such a good question, because we always, again, had a divide and conquer. We get that divide and conquer discussion. Like the moment you start to ask for reparation, or you discuss black or indigenous issues or any other marginalized group, that apparently is pitted against the white working class.
Hey, Graham, not to interrupt. Sorry, I'll let you finish. I do just want to be fair to Bob. And once again, I wasn't even trying to attack Bob.
Yeah, no, good.
I was using that just to talk about a point, right? So Bob is for reparations, to be fair. But so I was just using that as a way to bring up this discussion.
Yeah. No worries.
I'll let you continue. Graham.
Yeah. So the problem is that the emancipation of marginalized communities is very smartly, as particularly by the right, of course, being pitted against the needs and wants of the white working class. This is that divide and conquer, and this is also that minimal group paradigm. You make these distinctions: white working class, non-white working class, you immediately get competition. So the moment you start to discuss about reparations, which is for the non-white working class, in this case black Americans, African Americans, then it's immediately perceived as a competition with the own groups. Pure psychology, this, it's nonsense, because you all want the same. You want an egalitarian society. You want a society where people are pulled out of the working, about their low socioeconomic status, where everybody can live a good life. So that what you need then is, first of all, of course, that marginalized communities, disadvantaged communities, are not structurally disadvantaged anymore. How can we get that? We're still living in a capitalist society. We have to survive. So how can you do that? Reparations. And in my opinion, I can tell you this: as long as there are structurally disadvantaged groups, they deserve all the reparations they can get until the society is egalitarian. Very simple. As long as there are structurally disadvantaged groups, they deserve reparations until there is no structural disadvantage anymore. And that includes white working class people as compared to upper socioeconomic status white people, for example. But in the sense of the even further disadvantaged groups, groups that get disproportionately killed by the police, don't get any less job opportunities, less health outcomes, live in impoverished neighborhoods. I think these people, especially considering their history of extreme suffering under colonialism and slavery, these people need severe reparations to at least be able to get by in this system on an equal footing with the majority of the people in society. You know what I mean?
Once again, a lot of these people are good at talking about class issues, like how much uplifting workers will help the economy. So once again, even if you're white, why wouldn't you be for reparations? Because that money that is gifted to black workers, that go back into communities, into businesses, into your businesses. So the thing is, it doesn't make any sense to even oppose it other than cultural war, white identity politics. And I would love to see arguments. I see someone say you should talk to someone, Nick, whatever. I talked to Garland Nixon about defunding police. I want to talk to anyone about any issue. Because my question would be, if you oppose reparations, my question, you got to explain in great detail why. Do we not have the political capital? Do you think we don't deserve it? All these arguments, I think I can take on, and I think I can challenge all those. The argument that we don't deserve it, we cover this all the time. I can challenge that one. The argument that it would be, and this is the argument a lot of white leftists use. They said, "Oh, it will divide worker solidarity." Okay, if this divided worker solidarity, there was never worker solidarity. So if you guys abandon, like, so let's say we had a giant movement that was fighting for healthcare, right? A giant movement fighting for living wages. Let's say we had a giant coalition, but then we were like, all right, let's ask for reparation. And then those white working class people were like, all right, I'm out. Fuck healthcare. Fuck living wages. If you add reparations, I'm out. If that's their position, they're going to sell us out anyway. They're going to sell us out anyway. These are the same people who say they're anti-capitalist, but they support the police state. They support the police state, right? So they'll sell us out whenever we get to negotiations like they did before in the past. But anyway, I didn't want to talk about this forever. Josana, you have anything else you want to add? And then we can actually dive into some stories if you want. Anything else you want to talk about?
I would like to go ahead and dive into stories.
Yeah, we can dive. We can dive into stories.
Craving to talk about Biden, but I think that makes a connection, right? It makes a connection. I can never not see the international perspective of things and don't think it's a problem with, I don't want to say an isolated problem for the United States of America, but it is a problem of the imperial core. I just spotted Dave. Hi, Dave. It's a problem that comes from the imperial core, right? Like it comes from the UK, from here, France, like this sorry, I just spoke Portuguese. The resistance to groups that are considered lower, and the divide and conquer little seeds like, oh, we're gonna reparation for African people from the diaspora, reparation. And you just go like that, no education on the factor. And what happens when you don't have education, when you don't have critical thinking? You just want to be the oppressor. And then the infight starts happening because the poor white class, the only privilege they have over any other person of color is that they are white. They're white passing. White passing people in the US are not even considered white. So they go into the same experience. Go ahead, Nick. I feel like I spoke too much.
No, what's that? Let's take this on a transition, and I'm glad we have Cream here that can react to the story with this as well, because he will give us a great contrast because he is in China, and I would love to hear about their COVID response. We was talking earlier, and he said something that was very interesting, but we will dive in that here very soon. Let me preface the story with this, right? So I'm on the official "I Told You So" tour, unfortunately. We had to break kind of dissonance, right? But I do want to shout out to Fanto. Thank you. Every time we talk, it is framed. We have finite supply of income, but there's no ceiling for wealthy incentives. Exactly. Soundbite for discussion is so small, it's impossible to talk coherently, in my opinion. And that's a great point by Fanto. And that was the root of my argument, right? So if you don't support reparations, especially if you consider yourself a Marxist, you have explaining to do, especially if you're in the United States. Are you saying we can't afford it? Like, what? That's ridiculous. You know we can afford it. So what are you doing? It doesn't make sense. So I think that's what Fanto's talking about here. Thank you for the super chat. Anything you guys want to say, Josana and Cream, before I move on?
I still have something, but let's move on. We can do that some other time. I had a nice segment that really jumps into what Nick just said, but let's do that some other time. I think we would talk too long.
You can talk about it. You can talk about it if it's okay. We have time.
No, because I really think this will actually trigger a long discussion. I know, Nick, you will start ranting. So let's do that next time. We can talk about it another time.
We put on the bullet. We put on a list, right? So, all right, let me preface the story by saying this, right? So now a lot of people are starting to realize that a lot of the people who were leftists that was warning about the incompetence and the corruption of the Democratic Party and Joe Biden, like, we wasn't saying that just to be dramatic. I mean, you guys nominated Jim Crow Joe, one of the most corrupt and competent politicians. And not only that, anyone who actually understand theory, understand basic understanding of neoliberal ideology and capitalist ideology and how the U.S. empire had been governing for the last few decades, the idea that you will have a neoliberal in charge, The idea that you have a neoliberal capitalist in charge and somehow that he will be better at handling this pandemic, that it didn't make sense to me at face value. I remember, so I told people at the time, I said, and back when people, you put a lot of pressure on me because I'm like, man, there's no way you can get me to vote for Biden. I'm going third party. They were like, what about Trump horrific COVID handling? Trump is responsible for hundreds of thousands of people who are dead. We have to vote for a Democrat Party because we will have the competent manager in charge. That's what people said. Now, I have been pushing and probably over to window to the left because now I'm like, there are so many bullet points, which I've showed before, of ways that Biden has been worse than Trump. Once again, I'm not saying that as a opinion. I mean like objective fact on many metrics. One of them is COVID deaths and COVID cases. And this is despite the fact that Joe Biden has a vaccine. This is how incompetent they have been. And I have called it. And now a lot of people are shocked. Why am I bringing this up again? Because now we continue to see the corruption of Joe Biden, the incompetence of them. Because now, all of a sudden, you guys say you got to put Biden left, but now he's a libertarian now. So this is a very, very short clip. I'm going to show you guys of Biden's response when he was pushed on his handling of the pandemic, right? So always quote holding Biden accountable. Biden lied because he had this big call with governors, and he essentially said the same thing that Donald Trump said. The same thing you hear from libertarians. Let's check that out. Only 5 seconds here.
Look, there is no
let me turn this
federal solution. This gets solved at a state level. Look,
one more time.
There is no federal solution. This gets solved at a state level. Look, there is no federal solution.
No federal solution, he says. Now, one thing, if you guys think I am being unfair to Joe Biden, I am taking this opportunity because I didn't believe none of this shit. So once again, the people who got mad at me for calling this guy out and saying that Biden wouldn't be any better than Trump owe me some apologies. But remember, now the liberals are saying, what do you guys think he could do? Oh my God, you guys are being unreasonable. What could Biden do? It's the fucking anti-vaxxers. It's this, it's that, the red states. And I'm gonna get Josana in here. But this is what Joe Biden said. And this is the last thing I'm gonna say. This is what they campaigned on. This is what he said when he was campaigning. We're 8 months into this pandemic, and Donald Trump still doesn't have a plan to get this virus under control. I do. And this was the message of the Democratic Party. And I remember I know I'll keep bringing it up, but it was traumatic. Like the amount of people that thought I was deranged for saying you can't have a neoliberal capitalist like Biden and have him care about this pandemic. I have a few more things I want to add to this story, but I do want to get Kareem and Josana in here. But the people who get upset at us for criticizing the government handling of COVID is ridiculous. I don't trust any of these people because their only goal has only to protect business interests and to keep the power of workers in line throughout the course of this pandemic. Public health be damned. And that has been true under Donald Trump, and that's true under Joe Biden. Every decision they made has been to protect not even small business, but big businesses. And once again, I'm going to continue soon. I'm going to show you guys how even the CDC, and this shows how Biden is horrible. Because at least the CDC and these government institutions, they would do stuff to screw Trump. But now that Biden, their boys in, they doing stuff to protect the establishment now. But I'll get into that later. Josana, I'll pass it to you. Any thoughts? And then we go Kareem after that.
Well, we are 11 months in, and I think it's pretty clear now that the only part Biden would play, it was to keep the policies alive, but be more discreet with his language. It's insane to me when I see someone defending Biden or the squad, the fact they didn't see yet the big circus, the big theater that has been played. It's being played in a continuous way in front of everybody. Every single campaign promise was broken in front of every single person in this country and outside of here, right? Like the beginning, you had like the good boy is winning over the bad guy, Trump bad. And then, like, I, as an immigrant, and when Trump was just like loudly and clearly arresting children in a concentration camp, I was lost. I was like, we need to take this guy out. But then, when the Democratic Party came with Biden as the option to defeat this guy, I feel like I got more lost, because by then I saw, well, it's just another rapist. It's just another white supremacist. He's not gonna do it. He's not gonna cut. He's not cut for it. And then Kamala Harris is the vice president. I was like, yeah, I think worse times than these are coming, because the problem with the Democrats is that they do propaganda with leftist points, but they act right like the right wingers they are, the white supremacists they are. At least the Republicans were loud about what they were about, right? The problem with the Democrats is that they make up that speech, and nothing, not one little thing, not one little promise, not one little campaign promise was fulfilled. They had the nerve to take that $2,000 check. No one was paid that money. And I mean, I knew before, but from then, people had to see it, man. I was like, no, they're going to see it, and we're going to be camping on the streets to take this man away. No, we are not. We are actually 11 months in. And people are still like, oh, Biden's doing this. Well, I expected. It's one party. It's a white party. One party.
And now I want to get Cream in here because I want to explain this concept to people, right? Because I don't want you guys to misunderstand. Joe Biden and Barack Obama deported more people than Donald Trump. But I do not think they did that because they hate immigrants more than Donald Trump. I don't think they did it because Donald Trump had a lack of effort. Do you guys understand the concept that made that possible? You guys understand the reason why Donald Trump wasn't able to deport as many people as Barack Obama did in his first term, and the reason why Biden deported more people is because there are a lot of people within the Department of DHS that did not like Trump and did not agree with his direction. So there was a lot of, for lack of a better term, bureaucracy, hang up within these organizations when it was ran by an amateur like Donald Trump. Not only was Donald Trump an amateur, the people around him was amateurs, and a lot of people who work in the department didn't like him. So there wasn't the same level of communication. A lot of times you had a lot of people in DHS that opposed Trump, right? But when you have Barack Obama, when you have Joe Biden, you have a machine that is working in complete harmony. You got all of a sudden the person who worked for DHS, they know someone who have a business contact that used to work for Joe Biden. That now all of a sudden you're in the club and you're in government. And now it's all about protecting each other now at this point. So when they go after Donald Trump for one thing, but now they backing up Joe Biden for certain things. And that's how they was able to deport more people. So under DHS, they was able to get more stuff done. They deport more people because Joe Biden had a well-oiled machine. Why am I bringing this up here? Because I want to get Cream in here, but I want to share this part. I want to show this part of the story here because this is extremely significant. Now we're talking about more corruption when you have a liberal in charge, right? So people, how is it possible for there to be more COVID cases and more COVID deaths despite the fact that Joe Biden's president? So I have seen over the course of this last year, the culture war, people turn the COVID-19 into a culture war, right? Now you have institutions that are trying to make sure they can save the economy so it doesn't make Biden look bad. So when you had Donald Trump that was president, they offered lockdown, mass quarantines. They're doing everything they can to tank the economy when Donald Trump is in charge. But now when Biden's in charge, you have these same government institutions that are doing everything they can to protect the economy. So why am I saying this? Let me show you guys this. Let me share this, guys. Now, the CDC under Joe Biden is definitely a capitalist institution. We all know they serve capitalists. But the CDC, under the Omicron variant, we got Delta, we got all this crazy shit going on. All these cases are on the rise, right? Which is great. People can vaccinate themselves. People can quarantine themselves. I never blame people for this. The reason why I don't blame people for this, because if we actually had a government that would pay people to stay home, pay people to quarantine, maybe we can get rid of this virus. But it's all about upholding capitalism and the business class, right? So in order to get people back to work, the CDC says now instead of quarantining for 10 days, now they say you can quarantine for 5 days. So why is this significant? Because the CDC set the guidelines that businesses use. I have a friend who was just exposed to COVID, and she was quarantining, and she was doing it for 10 days because she didn't want to expose people to the virus. But now CDC is saying, oh no, you got to get back to work. Are they doing this because of public health? No. CDC is bought off by capitalists. Delta CEO asked the CDC to cut quarantine time for breakthrough COVID cases. Is it because he's a scientist? No. The corruption is out in the open, guys. Look at what he said. So you had the CEO who reached out to the CDC citing the impacts on the carrier's workforce. So they literally said it. They literally said they want to get people back to work despite the fact they may be exposed to COVID or maybe asymptomatic because they want to get people back to work. So my point on this, our entire government is corrupt and incompetent. So a lot of people want to blame anti-vaxxers. I don't like that shit. Blame the ruling class. You would have saved 1/3 of the people we had healthcare. If you had a government that was actually competent, that can handle this pandemic, that don't make decisions because of capitalists, we could have got this pandemic under control. People's personal decisions not going to make a big decision. Our government really screwed us up. And the reason why I wanted to say this before I got Kareem in, because we know Peter, he's been quarantined for a while. And this is why I wanted to wait to get you in now, Kareem, because I want you to talk. Now, you can talk about anything that we said earlier as well, but I also want to get your take on like China's policies, because we were talking earlier, and you explained how like COVID is essentially done in China. I don't know a ton about China, so I will give you the floor to kind of explain this. And this is why, once again, I do not blame unvaccinated people. I do not blame our workers. I don't blame the neighbors. It's the ruling class. It's the capitalist class. Anyway, I'm sorry. I know I went for a long time. I apologize, friend, but I wanted to set that up for you. So if you want to explain that concept, you can take your time, dive into China's COVID response, and respond to anything that me and Josiah said as well. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so many things to unpack. First of all, about Joe Biden, I'm always so surprised about how easily people forget and forgive. Like when he ran for president and all the promises he made, and then just blatantly throws all these promises away, blatantly lie to you guys. Like it's amazing. And then still when you read newspapers, also in Europe, about Joe Biden, it's all so soft and forgiving. I just don't get where this comes from. This weird kind of this weird kind of idolization of a democratic American president, even though he's just as bad as any other Republican president we had before, such as Donald Trump. And let's be honest, he doesn't even speak better than Donald Trump. You know, he speaks differently, but not better.
Exactly.
And the thing is with Biden, I mean, if we stick to the topic of forgetting and forgiving, I am seriously baffled and shocked when I see his old videos from during the time that he was still a healthy, mentally more healthy and younger politician. The things that he said, man, it's just insane. I mean, that is right-wing extremism. You know, the things he said about the so-called criminals and African Americans and all. And yeah, okay, I think most of your audience has seen all the old videos. What a terrible human being. I always
tell people, take what Biden say and add Trump's accent to it. Like add Trump's voice, add his mannerisms, to so many things he said, and he would have been, once again, not canceled. Cancel not the right word, because cancel culture doesn't exist for the ruling class. But at least I don't know. Maybe because maybe the liberals don't really care. I think my point is it's been exposed that the liberals don't really care if their person is decent. They learned from Trump that you gotta stay with your team no matter what. So maybe they know he's a piece of shit. Everyone knows he's a piece of shit. It just Sabi said Biden said he didn't want his kids to grow up in the racial. That's the quote I had in mind. Yeah, let's see if I can dig it up. But this imagine if Trump said that. Go ahead, Kareem.
Oh no, that's just one of the many things. I mean, you can just keep every time you hear the man, especially the days that he was still more sharp, every time you hear the man, you just oh man, you start to cringe. What a horrible human being. How can anyone feel comfortable just having this guy as a president or even a friend or a colleague? Such a terrible human being. The opinions that this man had is just shocking. And now he's U.S. president, and a lot of people just behave like he's an amazing guy and this and that. But I wanted to share something with you guys.
Yeah, I'll share it for you.
Yeah, two things. So first of all,
is it the map?
Yeah, the map first. If you can share the map first.
Okay.
Do you want to share it, Josana, or you want me to do it?
I have it here. So just going to open the map. Have the map there?
Yeah. So I think this is a very important thing that we need to start focusing more on in the discussion about COVID, because it's driving me nuts. We are talking about quarantine and all that kind of stuff. So Nick said something very important indeed, that the problem with what COVID exposes right now in warp speed, just like climate change, is that capitalism sucks. As a system, capitalism is terrible. It's not going to help us. And you see it with COVID-19. There are so many interests in favor of keeping COVID-19 that you see that these powers are winning in our system as compared to those who want to eradicate COVID. Think about this for a moment. With very wealthy billionaires, powerful people, if they wanted it to go the other way, it would have already gone the other way. So you must understand that the interests of the ruling class is in favor of maintaining this situation than eradicating it. Otherwise, they would have already done everything to eradicate it. So what is happening here? Well, for example, we see that continuously COVID-19 is mutating in the global south, then spreads to the Western world. We start to vaccinate. We feel a little bit safe for a while. We get a new mutation in the global south. We need to revaccinate. And somehow there are a lot of people who get extremely wealthy over this stuff. So what you see here is there is no urgency to eradicate COVID-19. People don't mind in the ruling class, especially in the West, that COVID-19 is rampaging in the global south like a big experiment. And the West, which has the money, can buy all the vaccines up, hoard all the vaccines, and keep inoculating its population endlessly. It makes people rich. It keeps the working class divided and how can you say that? Quiet. We don't have time to organize. You cannot go anywhere. So there is something we really need to start seeing, that apparently the interests are in favor of maintaining the situation than against. Otherwise, like I said, it would have been solved. The map you see here are the countries. Let's think about colonialism, guys. Let's think about colonialism for a moment. These are the countries that are against the most important thing to stop this pandemic for all of us and get back to a normal life. These countries are against wavering patents, vaccine patents. There are more than 100 factories around the world in the global south that are able to create the vaccine, and within 6 months we are able to vaccinate the whole world. It's not happening. It's not happening because capitalist corruption doesn't want the world to be saved because they rather have dollars. This is so important to understand, that we live in a global disaster with millions of
Correct me if I'm
millions of
wrong, but Bill Gates fought against this, didn't he?
yeah, exactly. And there are millions. We have a disaster with millions of deaths, and our capitalists refuse to solve this problem because they want to make money. So money trumps life of our earth. Money trumps life of us as human beings. So if that doesn't prove the bankruptcy of the political system that we are in, I don't know what does. That's number one. Number two,
if only the people, before you go on to the number two, if only the people that are in these countries, the people, not the ruling class, these are not people. If only the people that are in these countries, I hear an echo, I'm just gonna, if only the people that are in these countries could be able to trust their healthcare system, right? Because we have another crisis happening right now, like in the UK, they want to like destroy the public healthcare system, so they can privatize it. So they have an excuse to privatize it. Oh, public doesn't work properly, so we need to privatize it. They're pushing the privatization of the public healthcare system. And here in the US is the crisis that we already know. There is no universal healthcare system. There's no public healthcare system. And CDC, as Nick just showed, is bought by corporations. And so we have no trustworthy word of a health authority.
And let's not get started on the FDA as well. The FDA corruption, and I learned this as someone who was an athlete, and how they misled the public for years over basic nutrition. Like the amount that the FDA lied for corporations, for big food, and the same for the CDC. They always cover for big pharma, help them get stuff approved. So this is why when I saw the culture war develop around COVID-19, I could not roll my eyes harder. Like you had the liberals who say this is the pandemic of the unvaccinated, and you have right wingers who go completely the other way and pretend that liberals are the reason why this pandemic is as bad as it is. It's the system. It's capitalism that is horrific. And once again, you got liberals who want to blame the anti-vaxxers. They want to blame the people who don't trust the system, but they have many reasons not to trust the systems. As, for example, the medical experiments they used to have, the CDC history of lying, the FDA's history of lying. And I'm going to have Danny Harfong on my Saturday show here soon. This is probably one of my favorite takes I've seen during this whole COVID shit show of a discourse that I hated from day one. So even if you're one of the people that are like, oh my God, I don't trust the government, I don't trust big pharma, this is an important point to understand. This is why I will always put the onus on the ruling class, not the people, for the pandemic. Danny says there is no anti-vax movement in China, Cuba, or Vietnam. There are also no mandates there either. I'm going to get mandates. There's no mandates because the government protected human life from the very beginning of the pandemic. Cuba has one that I think was the second highest vaccination rate, like 90+%. Why do you think Cubans are not hesitant to take the vaccine in Cuba? Because they know the government actually gives a shit about them. Unlike what we just showed you, the CDC is literally giving you guidelines based on what CEOs of airlines want them to do. That's why people don't trust the government. That's why Anthony Fauci played a giant role in the horrific government response to AIDS. Well, he denied it for a very long time. These are the people that I am told to trust. These are the people that we are told to trust. So that was Danny saying. This is an amazing point. These people trust their government, whether they should or they shouldn't, right? But this trust makes so you're able to have effective public health policies, which is why Kareem is able to say stuff like COVID is essentially done in China, right? Is that correct, Kareem? Do you want to chime in?
Just before you go, just another Paul, sorry for that. The vaccines are in a stage of experiment. And they needed a massive experiment of the vaccine in population, just like 1918. The fact that places like, okay, we have a Morton as a president. I'm sorry for that. But in Brazil, we always had universal healthcare. So if there is a vaccine campaign, we go and we get vaccinated. because we are used to receive that kind of care because we invest with our taxes. But the thing about all the hiding and the lies about the vaccine to like make profit out of it makes people think that the health authorities are not trustworthy, because you need to go and be like, we are testing, we are like having this collective experiment for the next generations. So the more people vaccinated, the less contamination we're going to have. But not even that kind of conversation the authorities are having. They're straight up lying on our faces. So the numbers in Wall Street go up for Pfizer and Moderna. It's impressive how they're doing that on our faces. Same thing with things that Biden said. Like if you don't vote for Biden, you're not black. It's just like they are doing everything on our faces, and we are like just like kind of watching it and numb. And it's really weird for me that we are not like enraged against it.
Well, so I won't pass it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely, and again, what Haifeng says is so true. And again, that also shows the bankruptcy of our system. Is that a pandemic, a severe health crisis turns into a crazy culture war and fights over face masks. I mean, in the Netherlands now, we still have riots. We still have riots and burning cars and everything over face masks. And that is symptomatic of a society that doesn't know how to join hands anymore and fight together against disasters. That's a completely psychotic society that just starts blaming each other and fighting each other for every problem it sees. And it's a very sad state of affairs, but that is the state that Western capitalism has come to. And also about China. Listen, I live in Hong Kong, and I also lived in Malaysia before for 3 years. And the interesting thing is, I experienced COVID in Malaysia, I experienced in the Netherlands, and now I'm experiencing in Hong Kong. Funny thing is, if it doesn't matter where you are, Malaysia or Hong Kong, you always see people with face masks everywhere you go. Nobody gives a damn. It's just normal. You know, you have to get used to it in the beginning, but seeing bare faces, I don't see them anymore unless I'm in a restaurant and people take them off to eat or drink a beer or whatever. They're in a bar. But besides that, it's only masks everywhere you go. Nobody complains, and it's not a big deal because it protects us for a significant degree. So I want to show you another thing. I have the link there. It's on Google. It's about Hong Kong COVID cases. I don't know if you can share that.
Yeah. You sharing it, Josana?
No. You do it.
Yeah, I do it. All right, 1 second.
While Nick finds it, I just want to say that too. Like, there was never a mandate.
No, that's the other link. Other link, Nick. Sorry, the other link, the one above that one.
There was never a mandate, but there was always a heavy campaign that would push it for you to vaccinate. But also, there was never a conversation, and I'll bring it up because it's salty and complicated, but there was never a conversation about whenever we got vaccinated for tuberculosis, whatever, in Brazil, there was never a conversation of like vaccinated people can go in and non-vaccinated people cannot. Because I saw a sentence, and I forgot the name of the politician or the person that said that. This person said that teachers should bully non-vaccinated children into vaccination. And that's
so wow. Cream, you want to explain what I've shown here?
Right. So I am living in Hong Kong. I remember I went from the Netherlands to Hong Kong a year ago during the heart of COVID. And I remember that already in the Netherlands, when I wanted to fly to Hong Kong, I had to do a test in the Netherlands of a certified kind of clinic. Then I would fly to Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, immediately at the airport, I would be tested. I had to await the results. then immediately go into a quarantine hotel. In a quarantine hotel, I would be measured over the course of 3 weeks 3 times. And everybody would say, this is so over the top. This is ridiculous. And I also in the beginning was like, oh man, I don't want to do all that stuff. And it is annoying, I must admit that. But I can honestly tell you, life is normal here already for approximately a year. The metros are, the metro trains are packed. We can go to the bar to drink. We can go to the restaurants to eat. The lecture halls are full. Life is normal. Almost nothing happens. I'm 3 times now vaccinated by the Pfizer vaccine. You can choose, actually. You can choose multiple vaccines. You can choose yourself. You don't need to vaccinate, but you can choose. And it's just amazing. It's except the mouth masks. And the fact that at some places you have to make a photo with the app that you are in that place. Except that if the mouth mask would not be there, you would think COVID just doesn't exist in this part of the world. And it's because the government takes it serious and they help you and everything is free. Also, healthcare is free, public healthcare and vaccination is free.
Meanwhile, Biden can't even send test kits home. So that's just a reflection of why I don't blame workers instead of the government. It's the ruling class. With Josana, I think you want to say something, right?
No, I just was going to say, meanwhile, New York just hit tonight, today, 276, Nick, 276,000 cases of COVID-19 confirmed just today, just now.
So I have one last video I want to share you guys to really illustrate my point. Because I was wondering when I was going to play this. Because I just saw this maybe yesterday. But if you guys want to know why Americans don't trust their government on COVID information, or COVID, on how to trust the pandemic, there have been so many lies that have been told for our establishment from day one. Like when Donald Trump was president, you had Kamala Harris, you had liberals who was vaccine skeptics back then, but now they're in charge. Now they are singing a different tune. I want to show you guys why people don't trust the vaccine, because this is the kind of stuff, this is the information they was getting from the mainstream media. I'm gonna share this video. Let me mute my mic. It's a very short video, only 1 minute long, but I want you guys to show. I want to show you guys the incompetence. It's a very funny video to end on. 1 second.
It means that instead of the vaccine being able, instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person to person, spreading and spreading, sickening some of them, but not all of them. And the ones that it doesn't sicken don't know they have it. And then they give it to even more people because they didn't recognize they were, right? Instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person, potentially mutating and becoming more virulent and drug resistant along the way. Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus. The virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people. That means the vaccines will get us to the end of this if we just go fast enough to get the whole population. It means that instead of the vaccine.
See, that's a lie. That's a blatant lie on people's faces. That's why people won't trust. Just say, you want to achieve immunity, we have to test the vaccine. Everyone should get vaccinated, but it's not guaranteed that the vaccine works because it's in a moment of test. It's not ready yet, and it's normal. It's a generational thing. But they want to treat us like freaking crazy animals, like extremely ignorant people. Like we are not, as Karim said, critical thinking is an instinct of the human being. Looking around and questioning about things is what makes science. And we all have this instinct. So we are questioning right now when this woman comes up and lies to everybody to convince people to get vaccinated. This This is offensive. This is offensive. And I am speaking, I'm fully vaccinated. I'm okay. I can volunteer and have the vaccine and see if it works. I don't care. I'm here for the next generations. I'm planting this soil. They're going to harvest. That's how life works. It's a natural cycle. That's not me. It's us. But like, I understand that concept. Don't treat me, don't be condescending. Don't do that. I forgot the term in English, but there's this thing like where somebody's like
that sounds about right. That sounds about right. But you guys see why I tell you guys that video, right? Because now that's why people don't trust our mainstream media. And honestly, as independent media, we would have been taken down for that. Because no matter what you saw on the vaccine, we all vaccinated, we all
patronizing. Sorry, patronizing.
That's them misleading the public. Like what she said, just not true. But this is the kind of messaging we get. Inconsistent message. But I know, Cream, I know you want to say something. So I want you to get in and we can wrap up here very soon. But go ahead, Cream.
No, not much to add, actually. I just, she lies just as much or maybe even less than your president. So I'm not surprised at all. This is one big lying club. And as long as people accept that, because there are large swaths of people who seem to accept that and vote for these people, then things are absolutely not going to change. And what she says about the vaccine is nonsense. The vaccine just makes our bodies more efficient to deal with the virus, but the virus enters our body, and at that time we are infectious. That's the case. However, they will often make the disease less severe. And if you inoculate the people all around the world, also the global south, you have a chance actually to eradicate the virus, because all these bodies are more efficient in dealing with it instead of letting it mutate. So the biggest problem we have right now is not face masks, it's not anti-vaxxers, vaxxers, and vaccines and blah, blah, blah. The most important aspect we now have as a world community is that we waiver the patents, the capitalist patents on vaccines, and let the global south build their own vaccines because they can. And the moment we have that, then we can get out of this pandemic and maybe go a bit back to a more normal life and focus on other things like climate change and racism and all that kind of stuff. But right now, this needs to happen, and people need to start really demanding from their government to start pushing for this in the global stage, because it's mainly Europe right now. Of course, the United States can immediately.
Racist, right? It is racist because our countries
and it is racist, of course.
And Africa are suffering. Countries with brown, black, like it's clear where you can have a vaccine, a test, a privilege, and where you cannot. It's clear. So it is racist.
Absolutely. Very good point. And I think we need to start pushing our governments. And let's be honest here. I showed you the map, and you showed that Europe is the only part of the world that doesn't want to waiver patents. Even the US has agreed to waivering the patents. That was Joe Biden. But let's be honest here. There's one country that has the power to force anyone to waive the patent, and that is the US. But the US somehow doesn't really want to force its strong arm onto Europe and say, guys, you need to waiver the patents. So the United States, even though that map showed a green dot, the United States is just as bad as Europe, because the United States has the power to force its little brothers to waiver the patents, and it's not happening. So those of us who really want this to solve, really start focusing and pressuring your authorities that we need these patents to be waived. Otherwise, this will be an endless pandemic. Endless. And you guys already have 1 million deaths almost in the United States. It's insane. It's a huge crisis.
So there's a lot to continue on, but we can keep it there for this episode. We will be here every week as well. I know CJ has some great shows for you guys tomorrow. Any last things you want to say, Cream, in terms of anything you want to promote, anything you want to plug? Make sure you guys check out Bad Beat Media. You guys see their Cream channel on YouTube. Josana, any last words? Any last thing you want to say before we sign off?
Just want to say hi to Savvy. She's in the comments supporting us. Thank you, fam. Also to everybody here, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I would like to, for those who know me on Twitter, at Jazana16, we are making a campaign. It's the hashtag I am Tita. Tita is a brother, and he's from Nigeria, and we are trying to take him away. Sorry, Cameroon, and we are trying to take him in safety out of the country and bring to refuge. And we're doing Argentina, and and then we're gonna see from there. So if you can contribute to his fundraiser, the link is there. So thank you all.
Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you guys check out and support the Patreon if you want to continue to support our work. And we upload every day, so please share it to a friend. The Social Cinema, International Leftist Coalition, sign out. Take care, my friends.